Hello and welcome to this playthrough of Dominions. I'm going to be going through how to play Niefelheim, Sons of Winter, or at the very least how I'm going to play them, and or at least what I think is a viable build for Niefelheim in the early age. Now, one thing about Dominions is that it's an extraordinarily deep game, and I'm certainly not trying to tell you that I'm any kind of expert at this game. But I do kind of feel that I have a reasonable grasp of the game, and what I'm going to do here is do a playthrough of Niefelheim and show you what I think is a viable build. If you're familiar with my channel before, you'll be aware that we have done, myself with some other people, have done a YouTuber series of Dominions where we all played each other, and there's that whole series where about 8 of us. We each uploaded Dominions games from our perspective, and we all played together and we all uploaded videos, and it was a ton of fun. So if you were familiar with that, you should also know that we are going to be doing that again very soon. We haven't started yet, so the first videos will probably come out in a month or less, and we'll be doing Dominions 5. That's a late age. But today I'm going to be playing early age Niefelheim, or at least I'm going to go through the pretender design that I'm going to use. Okay. I'm going to go with a random map. I'm going to go with medium size, few water provinces. I only want to play with other land nations. And Rusty, because Niefelheim is all about the cold. Okay, so let's make this a 6-player game. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm going to play on Mighty. When you start going to the higher difficulties, I feel like you really have to start exploiting the AI to try and get ahead. I think Mighty is a reasonable difficulty to play on. Keeps things interesting. Okay, Sons of Niefelheim, where are you? Sons of Winter. There we go. So this is the game setup. Okay, so I should probably really talk about Niefelheim. They are a very cold themed nation. That's basically their main thing. Everything's cold resistant, prefers cold scale +3. So that's kind of set. that's on the extreme side of the cold scenario. Yeah, got giants, good giants. And let's just go into the nation screen. And then, yeah, let's go back here. Okay, so let's talk about the units. So, yeah, giants. In terms of the actual units, I don't really feel there's much in them. The Jotun militia, they all kind of have the same amount of protection or the same amount of attack. The only thing that really changes here is the types of weapon they use. Do you prefer an axe or a spear and a shield? Most of them have shields. And these guys on the Huskarls, they kind of just have this ring mail hauberk instead of the Jotun spearmen. So you go from 14 protection to 15. It's really not much. The spear's the same, 23 damage. So in terms of these units here, I really don't think there's much in it. You do get the hurler, which is a ranged unit. He throws a boulder and look, it hits hard. But he only has 2 shots with it, in which case it goes down to the hand axe, which is basically the standard giant axe infantry except without a shield. So if you have your front line filled up, you might as well have hurlers behind, and they have a siege bonus. But the one thing about these giants is that they all have extraordinary siege strength. These guys can take down forts like no one's business. So I don't really feel like you even need the siege bonus, but the Jotun hurlers are pretty great just at throwing rocks at things. They hit so hard. The most interesting thing about this race, I think, are the mages and this dude over here. So this is the main reason why I like to play Niefelheim, this guy, and I'm basically going to try and make these into thugs and make as many of them as I possibly can. They've got fairly strong magic parts, so they can cast a lot of the frozen, cold, winter spells. They also have death, which horde of skeletons they can throw out, and they also have these random parts as well. They can either strengthen in the water and the death or some air. But I use these guys to hit and attack and fight. So they'll probably cast 1 or 2 spells at the beginning of a battle, but otherwise then they're going to go into melee. And I like to kit these guys out. What I found to work really effective with these guys is a Vine Shield and a Ring of Regeneration. With so many hit points, to keep them in the fight with the Ring of Regeneration is very effective, and the Vine Shield helps to keep everything in place. But the real killer here is this chill aura. Everything around the giant is going to take cold damage, and how this works is it counts as fatigue. So if the enemies around him, or basically friends too, don't have cold resistance, they're going to fatigue out, and if they get to too high fatigue, then they actually start taking damage from the cold. And that, paired with a Vine Shield, basically just immobilizes everything around him, and he can just kind of smack them at his leisure. The Frost Brand on him is also pretty good, but honestly, the sword he has is fantastic. So does he really need the Cold Brand? I tend to make them just because I'm typically swimming in gems and it's really easy to make it. A Fire Brand I would prefer, but access to fire for this nation is difficult. Also, a better chest piece is also sweet, but not really necessary. Not with all the disable. And if you have 2 or 3 of these guys together, it's fantastic. They have these gauges which are great sight searches. You've got death and nature, and you got a few different possible randoms here. So in terms of magic sight searching, as far as astral, death and nature and blood, they've got you covered. Slightly different combinations. These guys are also unfortunately your main researcher because they are expensive. In terms of 180 gold a year for 15 research, it's expensive. So there are a number of independent mages which, if you can get access to, will be better. They do have Fortune Teller, which is great, but it's only 5. They do have Death Curse, which anyone killing this being will be cursed for the rest of his life. It's not possible to resist this effect. So if you're in the multiplayer game and you're feeling cheeky and there's a death through in the combat, send in the Geiger. Whoever kills it will get cursed permanently forever. It's just mean. Because typically they're going to want to send their combatants. So if you can get Death Curse on one of the enemy's super combatants, that's pretty nice. Very easy to get Death 2 on these guys. So these guys can cast Horde of Skeletons as well, which is a lot of fun. But really, I mostly use these to do nature sight searches because for these giants, both the Vine Shield and the Ring of Regeneration both require nature gems, and it's a limiting factor just how many nature gems can you get to kit these guys out. So nature sight searching is a big part of the game. The other mage here is the Jotun Skrati, which is 2 water off the bat, and another random path, which can either be one of the paths that we've seen here before. So these guys can also make fantastic blood searches. It's very easy to get a blood economy going with Niefelheim. They have all the right tools. The problem is that if you use these guys for blood searching, then you don't get the research that you need them for. These guys also are slow to recruit. So unless you specifically want these guys for a water or a blood reason, stick to the Geiges. They're cheaper. Actually, they cost the same, but they get recruited much more quickly. So unless you need the water sight searching, you don't really need to go with these guys. Spells. Okay, so there is a button here that you can push to bring the spells up. I forget what it is. Yeah, it is S. I was in the wrong screen. So spells for these guys. In the way I'm going to play these guys, I'm going to try and get to level 4 construction, because that allows me to build the Vine Shield and the Ring of Regeneration. There are a lot of spells that are really useful for this nation. In terms of conjuration, summoning Ice Drakes are good. You have a lot of water gems with this nation, and you can summon Ice Drakes. They are expensive, but I just find I have more water gems than I know I could possibly do with. So summoning Ice Drakes is fine. Using them to summon lesser water elementals this battle is also perfectly valid. Otherwise, enchantment's pretty great. For Horde of Skeletons, you have a lot of the Geiges. They can cast Horde of Skeletons with the Death 2. Some Niefelheim can also cast Horde of Skeletons. You can also create Revenants, which I've also found to be quite useful, because I also tend to have a lot of death gems when I play this race. Just because of the death path in the nature searching. And when you create a revenant and you give him this skull stick, which gives him +1 death, then the revenant can create more revenants of himself, and then all you really need is death gems. And if I don't have something to spend the death gems on, you can just kind of create a research force out of death gems, which is not an efficient way to use death gems, but if you're struggling for a way to spend them, it's pretty handy. Pale Riders is also a great way of turning death gems into horse skeletons. They're pretty sweet as well. There's also some useful things in Alteration, Liquid Body, which is basically available to all of your Niefelheim giants. So yeah, level 4 though, just in terms of everything else, this becomes a lesser of a priority for me. I'd much rather go for Conjuration, Enchantment, and Construction before I go to Alteration 4. So it doesn't really make a huge difference in my early game. There are also some sweet spells in Evocation. I guess one of the more interesting ones is, okay, it's not in Alteration, but let's just talk about the ones that are here. There's Rain, which is very viable, easy to access for this nation. Yeah, makes it harder to fly and limits the heat effects of hot creatures. Fire magic is more difficult, and fire spells have the fatigue cost doubled. So if you're going against a fire nation, you want to throw down some rain. If you want to go against some flies, rain is pretty good too, and very, very easy to cast. Some of the giants will be able to create Freeze and Mist, which is also a pretty handy spell. There's a fair amount of damage, it lingers, so this is a good viable spell as well. And then Falling Frost, we're getting quite late down in the tree here, but this is just a long range, higher effect, cold damage. This is a very, very viable spell for anyone who has access to it. Much later down in the tree, this is getting quite late game, but Murder in the Winter. This basically just wrecks an army. If you predict where the army will be and you cast a spiritual spell, it just does a ton of damage. It will kill a lot of enemy units in that province where you cast it. It's very, very useful. It's expensive. I like it a lot. There's an enchantment. There's a Grip of Winter. Here it is. It is enchantment. Grip of Winter. This causes a fatigue effect on everyone on the battlefield suffering from cold damage. So your entire army, your entire nation is cold resistant. So there's almost no reason to throw this out every time. It just helps. It's not super strong, but in a long enough battle, it will have an effect, and it's cheap. No reason not to cast this if you have it. So those are the most of the spells that I'm going to go for. Thaumaturgy has a lot of side searches. As I said, you can very easily go down the blood magic route for this nation. You have all the right tools, but if you do go down there, you seriously limit your research. And the way I like to play Niefelheim, I really need the research. So blood magic isn't really a priority for me. I think I've got most of what I wanted to say here. Just in terms of national summons, there's really not that much. Sloth of Bears, which is pretty meh, uses nature gems, which I'd much rather be into items. These guys are pretty handy. Awakened Jotun Draugr. Expensive in death gems, but they basically create a large undead death giant, which is pretty great. They're expensive, but they're pretty great. So nothing horrible about that. Brood of Garm. A pack of huge wolves. It's fine. Uses nature gems, so I'm really not interested. And that's really about it. Okay, I think I went through that a little quickly, but that's basically how oh my word, words can be difficult sometimes. So this is how I intend to play it. I'm going to go with Construction 4, and then depending on what's happening, either go down Conjuration or Enchantment. The units in this nation are expensive. They require a lot of gold. These guys are complete gold hogs. So I like to start off with an early expander, a super combatant. And the one I'm going to go for, I mean, the dragon is very thematic, but I much prefer to go with the this guy. I think he's reasonably cheap for what he is. but very importantly, it gives access to earth magic. And if you get enough earth sites, enough earth gems, this opens a whole new arena in terms of what items you can give to your thug giants, as well as dwarven hammers, which can save on nature gems, which for me have always been a limiting factor. So because of what this nation is, max growth, need the gold, and then go to 3 earth. This will basically get you most of the sites, and that 4th earth is just expensive. I'm really not that interested in the bless for this nation. I'd much rather go for a productivity and throw in some dominion there. And you might as well take another water, because it's only 1 more from the starting point. It's only going to cost 8 points. So, and awake, because early expanding, and also like the dominion that an early awake pretender gives. So this is my pretender creation for Niefelheim, Frost Giants. So yeah, I hope to see you join me in doing this playthrough, and hopefully I don't fail horribly. Okay, thanks. See you soon.